On March 27, 1968, a tragic aviation accident claimed the life of one of the greatest heroes in human history, Soviet astronaut Yuri Gagarin. He was the first person to journey into outer space, a symbol of courage and the triumph of human will. But no one could have imagined that this legendary man would die not in the vacuum of space, but during a routine training flight aboard a MiG-15 jet. Gagarin was only 34 years old. He was born in the Smolensk region in 1934. A man of excellent physical and intellectual development, standing 165 centimeters tall and weighing 68 kilograms. He was an accomplished athlete and a skilled pilot. His medical and psychological tests were all rated as excellent, and he had logged 257 hours of flight time with 41 parachute jumps to his name. He was known to remain calm under extreme stress, and during astronaut training, he withstood high G-forces in centrifuges and grueling simulations without issue. His performance was so exceptional that in 1961, the Soviet Union chose him as the first human to orbit Earth. 7 years later, the unthinkable happened. On that fateful day in 1968, Gagarin and his flight instructor, Colonel Vladimir Sirogin, took off from the Kholovsky airfield near Moscow at precisely 10:18 a.m. The mission was simple: evaluate Gagarin's readiness to resume solo flights after an 8-year hiatus from active piloting. They were given 20 minutes to complete a basic training flight. At 10:30 a.m., Gagarin radioed that the mission had been completed and requested permission to return. That was the last anyone heard from him. Just moments later, contact was lost. Eyewitnesses later claimed to have heard 2 loud explosions from the forested area where the aircraft was last seen. Hours later, search teams discovered the wreckage and the remains of the 2 pilots. A government commission was immediately formed to investigate the tragedy. 29 volumes of reports were compiled, and yet, even today, the exact cause of the crash remains uncertain. All technical systems on the MiG-15 were functioning correctly at takeoff. Weather conditions were adequate, with cloud cover at around 900 meters. Aerodynamics and control systems showed no signs of failure. Investigators determined that the aircraft struck the ground at a 50-degree angle, descending at 145 meters per second, traveling at 680 kilometers per hour. The engines were still running at 10,000 RPM at the moment of impact. The aircraft, a MiG-15 UTI, was manufactured in 1956 in Czechoslovakia and had undergone several repairs, the last just a year before the incident. The official conclusion stated that Gagarin and Sirogin made a sudden evasive maneuver to avoid a balloon or a cloud formation, which caused the aircraft to stall and enter an unrecoverable spin. According to experts, the pilots fought to the end, but lacked 200 to 300 meters of altitude to recover from the flat spin. But many, including fellow Soviet astronauts, refused to accept this explanation. 4 prominent Soviet astronauts, Andrei Nikolaev, Pavel Popovich, Valery Bykovsky, and Viktor Gorbatko, signed and sent a letter to Defense Minister Dmitry Ustinov expressing their deep dissatisfaction with the official findings. In the letter, they called the Commission's conclusions baseless and speculative. They weren't the only ones with doubts. Major General Anatoly Polishuk, who led an internal review of the original Commission's work, later revealed that some of the investigation's most sensitive findings were immediately classified. Among the suppressed information, evidence that another aircraft had been in the same airspace as Gagarin's jet at the time of the crash. Soviet astronaut Alexei Leonov, the first human to walk in space, also took part in the investigation. On March 27, 1968, he and his parachute team were training just kilometers away from the crash site. Leonov recalled hearing 2 explosions in quick succession, one of them a sonic boom. According to Leonov, several local villagers saw a low-flying aircraft with smoke trailing from its tail before it shot upward into the clouds. This aircraft, Leonov insisted, was not Gagarin's. He believed it to be a Sukhoi Su-15 interceptor that had violated altitude restrictions and descended below the clouds. Leonov later wrote that the Su-15, flying at supersonic speed with afterburners engaged, unknowingly passed close to Gagarin's plane. The turbulent shockwave from the jet's sonic boom likely destabilized the MiG-15, sending it into a deadly spiral from which it could not recover. This version of events was supported by additional eyewitnesses and even members of the parachute team who confirmed hearing the sonic boom and explosions. And yet, despite the evidence, Leonov and his colleagues were told to remain silent. Senior officials, including rocket engineer Andrei Tupolev and cosmonaut trainer Nikolai Kamanin, allegedly knew the truth. But when this information reached high-ranking officials such as Nikolai Stroyev from the Military Industrial Commission, the directive was clear: do not reveal this. You'll ruin the career of a pilot who made an honest mistake. The truth remained hidden. Years later, Leonov requested access to classified files and even appealed to President Vladimir Putin. Finally, his suspicions were confirmed. The real cause of Gagarin's death had been known to investigators all along. The presence of the Su-15 interceptor, its descent below minimum altitude, and the resulting air turbulence were all documented, then buried. Leonov was asked not to reveal the name of the pilot involved. At the time, that man was still alive and had been honored as a hero of Russia. Alexei Leonov kept that secret. He took the name of the pilot with him to the grave. Gagarin's death shocked the world and left behind a cloud of questions that would linger for decades. Was it pilot error? A flawed investigation? A cover-up to protect someone higher up in the military chain of command? We may never know the full story, but one thing is certain. Yuri Gagarin was more than just the first man in space. He was a global icon, a symbol of hope during the darkest years of the Cold War, and a man whose life ended far too soon. And to this day, his legacy continues to soar among the stars.
Please don't forget to subscribe or write a comment and put a bell so as not to miss new videos. Thanks for watching.